Good morning, everyone. I'm Mary Edwards with Connecting with the Stars, and I'm here with my very good friend and special guest, Dave Wallace, who I've introduced several times before on other shows. So we're going to move through the bio and just get into quickly how we met, how we connected immediately at Mount Shasta last summer, and how important it is to recognize those connections when we meet other soul family or galactics, other people like us that we can trust and love and share truth and honor and integrity with in our daily lives. And that my friend Dave and I here connected with and found from similar backgrounds to travel around the world to finding our galactic family. So good morning, Dave. It's beautiful to see you again.
Good morning.
Good morning, America.
I know. Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody is happy. I know that everyone is well, and we're becoming more well. And Mary and I haven't had a chance to catch up for a little while, and there's been some really interesting things going on. One of them is a fascinating topic Mary brought up, and we wanted to touch on this really briefly about the transfer back to the divine feminine. And this is something that I've always spoken about in all of my interviews, of getting the goddess back into the temple. And not because I'm down on males, nobody's a bigger guy than me. I just, I think that we need mothering, we need nurturing, and we need love. And the connection to the divine feminine, and now a deeper understanding of what's known as the divine masculine, where men can also be kind spiritual leaders and kind decision makers 100% of the time. That everything that we say is the most important thing we've ever been able to say, and that we're always there to help, because the role of a male in that beautiful Heros-Gamos relationship is to provide a healthy example of honor and safety and just behavior, always operating on just, kind, and conscientious behavior. Men don't have to hide behind a facade anymore about being into hard rock and roll and having a dirt bike, or someone who's a surfer that's just does that for a living and they don't pay attention to anything else. But even though most surfers I know are pretty switched on,
Or a
but
big
sort
tech
of,
guy, or a big
yeah,
money
people,
guy,
right?
whatever the
People,
gamut is of, I mean, you're in Southern California and I'm up in tech land up here in San Francisco. So it's the renaissance, the weaving, like you're saying, of what men can become more of. And I've been in masculine a lot in my life, and now I'm coming into my feminine. And what we connected with was our renaissance of both the masculine and feminine that you're diving into now. And I'll let you continue on because it's beautiful what you're saying.
oh, thank you. You're an observance of this very interesting and very wonderful change that's come upon us. And I know just to digress a little bit, a lot of people talk about ascension still, and that's a wonderful thing, because we're all ascending to a higher level of cognition, higher spirituality, higher sense of love, and understanding what true love really is, loving your life, loving every moment, loving the planet, loving each other, and being supportive. And so this whole process where all of humanity awakens at the same time. And this is happening all over the world. We've seen it in, everything from civil rights demonstrations in countries you'd never expect them, like, what's going on in the Far East. So it's a fascinating period in our evolutionary history. And from my experience with Beyond Earth Sentience and the conversations I've had with my guide, Kim Jim, he was very clear to me about there not being just one genetic trigger or two genetic triggers that allow us to access our higher cognitive functions, but three or four or five. And they're all going to be happening over this next 5-year period or less. And so the ball is rolling. It's the 1%ers that have done it. And it's all the beautiful souls that have come before you and I, who understood the connection of that we're all one. We're all one. We're all connected by love. So there's been many beautiful souls before us, and even the wonderful, your wonderful friend, Barbara Lamb. And Barbara has been expressing the idea of a peaceful one world community where we all love each other and there's no more problems.
Well, and
And
that's why we did the book together of ET Friends in Space.
oh yeah, I can't wait.
Last year, and I showed it to you in Mount Shasta, but that's what the whole purpose was, to start sharing not only our own oneness that I've talked about and you've talked about. I mean, I used to go to Baha'i Temple down the street from me in Wilmette, Illinois, when I was 5 years old, and their whole Baha'i Temple is all about unity. And you and I have found that on and off throughout our lives. And that's what we were trying to do in our book, is to show more positive ET experiences, which you and I are talking about today with on Earth with friends like we are, and also we're hybrids too, as we know, and with many others that we've come in contact with the last couple of years, especially, we're all banding together more in our tribe of love and connection, and helping shift it as we play our part on this planet, which is why we're here right now together. So yes, we are so grateful for the others that have touched us, and how when we met, we immediately connected for all the not synchronicities. I mean, they're coincidences. No, they're not synchronicities. They're really the reality of why we were supposed to meet at this time. And we know that. And this has happened both of our whole lives up to our 60s and 70s. So it is a beautiful time that we are all here together to help support this lift. And COVID was wonderful in many ways, terrible, obviously, in many ways, because it forced us home inside our hearts and souls to reflect and dig deep, like I did and you did and we all did, to really shift and go into the dark parts and go, okay, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? How can I not only just be of more service, how can I touch my heart and my soul and my mind and my spirit to be more effective, to help others just be better? And we're here to do good. That's bottom line. That's what we're doing here. And we know that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when we reach our higher cognitive functions, and the part of our brain that allows us to absorb information systems or different types of science like biochemistry or physics or biology, earth sciences, when you access your higher functioning centers of your brain because you've made a decision to work on your awareness of all the sciences, all the metaphysical sciences, all of esoteria, when we absorb all of that information, it's still the preponderance of the effort is laced and given to us to be the scale, so that we have to, absorb these things. So it's really important, I think, to remember that when you are absorbing all the massive information around us, and some of this is stuff that is made to keep us busy, and some of it is stuff because you have an amazing mind and you're always putting out ideas. So important to find some quiet time to quiet our minds so that we can hear certain voices. One of them is the voice of Gaia, or Mother Earth. And Gaia loves us very much, and she even loves us more when we produce offspring that love her unconditionally. It's one thing to chain yourself to a redwood tree or to rescue baby cougar cubs from some sort of logging or some sort of agricultural expansion.
And we've done that with our children, and that's
another thing, right?
It's connecting inner and outer space, and
it's another thing to produce offspring that love our earth unconditionally, because it is our home. And there are a lot of people that are fascinated about other dimensions, the dimensionality of higher thinking, the physical manifestation of the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. And of course, all of these things are being studied in quantum physics. And when my experience happened to me, immediately my whole thought processes changed so that I was able to start absorbing vast amounts of information about higher physics and quantum physics and light studies and mechanical physics, and all, was getting involved with the Laplace transform and the Fibonacci sequence, and all these amazing things started happening to me. And going to school to get a degree in astrophys, and I did all right. I got my sheepskin, and I'm not using that professionally. What I did was I went to school a little bit more to understand the nature of higher communication forms that human beings are either not aware of or they're becoming more aware of. And they need more answers about how we receive information, how we process information. So, funny enough, Mary, my interest in astrophysics or physics itself and quantum physics, and I just love reading about new functions. There's some out there right now in quantum physics called Green's functions, which are fascinating. One of the things that I've been made acutely aware of through physics and through higher mathematics is the need to know more about neurology, specifically the human brain and the way nerves function, the way transmitters transmit, receptors are produced by transmission. So when you get an idea, you get an electric spark in your brain and you produce an enzyme or an amino acid that causes that spark to become an idea. It's sent off to a receptor, and that receptor takes it and places it into the area of your mind that can coordinate and finish that thought. And it's based on the amount of the electrical signal the transmitter is sent to the receptor. And that also carries things like importance. So if you have an important thought, you'll have a higher signaling function, and that important thought will manifest. So understanding the functions of my brain and studying neurology now, because I've been reading about neurosciences for just over a year, is that there's a transference of physics naturally into neurosciences, because I'm starting to find that everything is not only based on the dimensional physicality that the world around us possesses, but I'm starting to see things like the physicality of the spoken language, this physicality of sound.
Are you breaking up a little bit? Could you repeat?
And the sound really disappeared.
You just broke up for the last.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm moving around too much.
Don't move, because we just lost those last couple sentences. So if you could.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, your cell phone still.
Well, so I'll be a little bit more clear. So one of the things. No, I'm using a beautiful Apple computer. I'm out here with my laptop.
Okay, it just was, you were breaking up, so I just wanted to let you know that.
Yeah, it's the signal, and plus, whenever there's high vibe, the video always goes a little wonky, and there is a lot of high vibe. So what I was talking about was the fact that your neurotransmitters in your brain help you cognate the idea. Well, right now, because of all of the different signals that are occurring, whether they're albedo or whether they're coming from the universe, it still rests upon your shoulders to be the scale to understand what signals you're receiving. My mathematics has changed into a direction where I'm studying light, the transmission of light, and what's called light packages. And this was something that was first brought up by Einstein and de Broglie back in 1943. They were discussing how photons can be coupled or grouped together in order to transmit them or send them, and not discover other things like side lobe light waste and replicative fade. So what I've understood is that mathematics can be expressed in the form of flashes of light, and higher formulas and equations can be compressed through linear physics, turned into a single symbol, which represents the whole formula, and then be converted into a light signal and transmitted. So we can transmit this. And so this is the basis of my research. And right now I'm writing a couple of papers that I have to turn into the American Astrophysical Society, or the AGU also, about the nature of light and how light can be supported gravitationally and electromagnetically, and how light can be directed at a specific region in deep stellar space and have a mathematics program sent on a light beam to a planet 10, 15, 20 light years away. And that light beam is a stack or a series of millions of formulas, which represent the total sum of the physicality of our expression of existence. And once received, the light beam can actually go through a process that I call decollapsing, where we can then turn that symbol, look at the single symbol, which represents a formula, turn it in a two-dimensional linear format, and decollapse to all of its constituent physics nomenclature. And then you can read the formula out properly. The next phase of humanity trying to cognate higher mathematics has to step away from the concept of using a chalk on a chalkboard. It takes hundreds of hours to express even some of the smallest equations, but the most fascinating equations. It takes hundreds of hours to be able to study, write those things out. If I wanted to write out Maxwell's theory of electromagnetism, I have to look at the work of Gauss before him, and then the work of Ampere's, and then how Maxwell gave us the right hand rule so that we understood the direction of magnetism. And he also was able to add mu naught and epsilon naught to show the empirical flow of magnetism. So if it wasn't for Maxwell and the work of these other physicists before him, we wouldn't understand how magnets work, or at least he's the first person to express that. So when we start thinking about our higher functions, they're all interconnected in a strange way to our hearts and our spirits, because we possess our own mind. And being the judge of the circumstances that occur around us, however hyperbolic they appear, we're still able to find that calm space in our minds, which can intuitively seek out that wonderful quiet place where we can hear Gaia and hear our hearts and hear the song of the universe. And these are very important hymns that are come in the form of a hertz range, like solfeggio frequencies, and you can look those up. So just we're moving into this period where we're waking up. Now, the goddess being returned to the temple has so many wonderful implications for the future, because the goddess wasn't a satrap or a queen that ruled with a whip. The goddess in the temple was the great mother. She represented all life. She represented birth and kindness and love and harmony. And when she was dethroned sometime a few thousand years ago, things have really gone sideways, haven't they? There's so many terrible things that have manifested that should have been thought of differently and done differently for different reasons. We can't change the past, and we can't really change the recent timeline either. So it's so very important to be able to find that quiet place so that we may find oneness and then start having proper, organized, higher intellectual thinking. Because once we try and,
right?
yes,
Stillness.
yes, and right. So once we identify the dimension in which we live and the physicality of our own bodies and how we affect the world around us just by existing. And so if we transpose the busy day into the quiet contemplative day, then we're able to find the true path and the direction of where all of us should be. No more pollution, no more war, anything, you know. And I know you feel it. So you know, always so nice to connect with you and reaffirm the positive, because we are all going through this marvelous change. I've seen it. I'm sure you've seen some examples.
Oh, this year and the last few months and the last few weeks has been just incredibly insane. It is a time of huge shift right now, endings and beginnings that we can't ignore. Or if we want to ignore it, go ahead and ignore it. But we want to feel these shifts, and we are getting a lot of information right now if we so choose to pay attention to it and go deeper and, you know, and not only anchor and ground, but also to ascend. So it's that, as you say, it's that fine balance of energy where we have to have our day job and our night job, and then the in-between job of finding that regrouping all day long. And you and I both have a lot of energy, and there's a lot of noise everywhere. We all have energy and noise around us, and we have to tune that out so we can regroup and reconnect to our inner outer space and our inner outer heart and mind and body, to be able to go those deep places where we find that still, where we can be the most creative and the most effective and find the most meaning to help ourselves and others around us.
Right. And you know, some of us are naturally predisposed to being that way, and just God bless those people. There's so many wonderful people sacrificing everything to do the right thing. People that work with the environment, people working with animals to protect species, people working long hours in hospitals to protect people that have other illnesses, never mind the pandemic, just other illnesses like, you know, tuberculosis. And I'm constantly coming up with ways to support local children's hospitals. We have St. Jude's, and we have the Shriners Children's Hospital, and they just opened up their brand new facility in Pasadena. So God bless everybody that supports the Shriners, because we all do our best for those guys. I mean, my pie shop a couple years ago was able to generate $1,000 in pie sales in a two-day event at the beach, and we donated a lot to the Shriners Children's Hospital, and we like to think it helped with the ribbon cutting ceremony.
I'm sure it did. Well, helping kids is important. I helped start the Ronald McDonald House here in San Francisco
Wonderful.
years ago, and I worked on Marin General Hospital and healing gardens, and I worked with kids with our therapy that have cancer.
Right.
I have both been, and a lot of us have been involved in the community for a long time, and it's not just because we think we need to, it's because we are drawn since children ourselves from we've all been through trauma, we've all been through fear, we've all been through loss. Most families are dysfunctional. We've all been through stuff, and that's what makes us grow. And I told my kids
that's so absolutely matter of fact. I love it.
And when I was a single parent with my kids, when they were like 6 and 7, I'm going, oh, holy crap. I didn't, what am I supposed to teach them other than to be good, do good, give back? Alex does forestry at the Presidio Trust, and Lizzie connects thousands of people every day at salesforce.org. And, they do everything they can, as your son does, and we all do. So it is a time of finding calm, and then also being able to allow ourselves to be feeling and allowing the time and energy, whether it's 4 a.m, like I know you and I get up really early, where it's dark and it's quiet, and meditate or just find silence.
Well,
that's the only time there is, really. Or at night, yeah.
Between 1:30 a.m. and 3:30 a.m. is really, it seems to be naturally quiet, even for people who are busy in corporations. And so when you think about air traffic and other things, it's really quiet at night. So those times, if you can, get to bed in an early hour and wake up at 2 a.m., I do all my best work. My best thinking is at 3 in the morning.
Me too. I go outside on my patio. You can see here, you've seen this many times. I lie out on my cutting green and I look up at the stars at night before I go to bed at 10 o'clock, and I wake up at 3 or 4 when my brain wakes me up to do things. And that's when, well, anyway, everybody has their own timeline, but that's when we go up, and others do too. I mean, it's definitely, we have to pick and choose whatever our time clock is to be able to grab those moments in and out at those times, and then also during a busy day. That's why you're where you are and where I am here too, because we choose to be with nature, even though we're near cities. I need to be connected to both, and I'm 5 minutes from the water, and you're near the water, and I have space and air, and anybody can go out into nature and chill out. I mean, we walk, anybody can find a park wherever you are, or some trees, and just go, or lie down in your backyard and look at the stars to feel connected. So I think we have to, people are learning this more and more as noisy gets to a pitch fever for us sensitive ones too, like me. I've been that way like my whole life, and I know you have too. But it's the choices we make. We pick and choose every day how we want to feel, the people we want to be around, the negative people we move away from, the negative furniture, the negative materials that we put in our bodies, the negative everything that we live with, the old sofa that you hate, that like you really hate, that was in the family that gives you the creeps. We have to use personal, emotional, psychological, psychic hygiene all the time, and eat well, do well, be outdoors. And we have to just compartmentalize our days to make sure we allow enough time for the things that really matter, to keep us grounded and working and thinking and safe for ourselves and our children. But we have to be really focused and organized. I know you are, and I am too, and most people listening here are, because it's an exhausting world out there to keep up with everything, and communication changed obviously a lot during COVID. And anyway, so we're at a good place right now, and I'm just so glad we're talking today in December at the wrapping up of the year. Thanksgiving, we got through, all of us on the planet got through with a lot of, got through that, which was really nice, and a day of thanks and remembrance of all the good things that we have. And now going into this very important next few weeks before this holiday in 2023 comes, we can still make changes and manifest and set our intentions for not only every day and throughout the day, but for even a better year that it's going to be next year with all the division and stuff that's going on. That'll never change. I keep talking.
Yeah, I believe that
Yeah.
100%. I believe that 100%. You've touched on, wow, sweetie, you've touched on some very powerful stuff, and all the stars and sparkles are going off in my brain right now. You just really, you know exactly what's going on, and you're able to translate it too. I think there's, even though the similarities between us as friends is so striking, it's just unbelievable. You're like my sacred female doppelganger. I mean, the whole thing with the wine and Europe and the outer space and the aerospace and everything, the work with NASA you did. Oh my God. I mean, it's just so funny. Every time we talk, I'm just like, yep, that's sort of like my goddess sister. I think you're a star sister. I
We
don't really,
are. Yeah,
I
I
don't
know
really
we are
resonate.
sisters and brothers because we're both sort of part male and female. I've
Right.
always wanted to be more because I wanted to go out and work at NASA and do all the things I did. But also we care so much. We have the strong feminine side that I love in you so much too. So we are the yin yang, and we all need to go into whatever more of that and
Yeah.
blend it more together now at this
Yeah.
time to feel more and also be strong and do all those things that are not male and female traits. They're just human traits. And ET,
Correct.
trying to work together to on our bodies to ourselves. And like what you and I touch on, it's like we talk for 15 hours. I mean, we could talk from now till New Year's Eve on the things that we connect on, because it's all the same vibration, and it's just wanting to reach and stay at a vibration of happiness and love and health and wellness that's just pure. It's Mother Earth.
What a,
It's all
yeah,
those things.
what a nice, clear thought. Absolutely. I turned my head for a moment just to listen very carefully. And I love sitting in my garden because I'm in constant fresh air. We have constant fresh air off the Pacific.
Yep.
And I
I
have a
do
lovely
too.
large garden, and it's fun to sit in it. You got to have it. You got to have it. And it's pesticide free and it's organic. And it used to be the community trash pit until I took it over. And it's attached to my business now. So it's my lease. In that sense, I own it, I suppose. And I let people come back here what that need a little Zen experience, because we're surrounded by very dense, populated, beautiful, but huge strand homes and then big homes on the foothills behind us. So it's a little microcosm, and all the little animals in the neighborhood come to here to live. I have grass snakes, jumping spiders, beautiful praying mantises, giant leafhoppers, about 5 varieties of butterfly. It's just, you wouldn't believe it, the finches and the hummingbirds. It's a little Shambhala preserve for all the little animals in the middle of the city. And it helps me ground myself because, being a sensitive guy, I I don't really like feeling all sorts of stuff. And I want to mention, just to digress, you mentioned that we are like alien human hybrids, and some of us feel less and less human every day. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Sometimes when I see things that happen, I wonder how the hell anyone let that happen in the first place. And it just doesn't make me feel like I belong to this planet. And when you have that strong feeling, then all right? You don't need to have contact. And you feel that way, that's why. Because people that are higher than us, that are very caring and concerned about us, would never behave the way that we behave. So, but I don't resonate with the word hybrid, but I do resonate with star child or star family.
I agree with that. I happen to have 128 hybrid children. I know when I went on
And I
craft at age
understand, but see,
5,
that's why
I mean,
that
it's
doesn't connect to me.
terminology. We both of us would love to change the word sustainable, hybrid, all,
Right,
we going from frequency to oneness
right,
and now consciousness. There are no good words really or terminology today for some of these things, but we're just
right.
using them because it's common language
Oh,
now.
no, no, no. I know that. I
But
know that. But there's a difference in the way that I feel when I use certain words too.
yeah, me
Because,
too.
I really am espousing the virtue of the idea that thoughts are things, that we manifest things just by purely thinking of them. So we have to always be careful of our thoughts and only think kind things.
Well, we know
right?
that,
Because
and
it was
the ET, I mean, everybody, we know what we feel, and we're watched all the time. And
right.
when I say something negative about somebody, I go, "Oh, Mary, don't do that," and
Yeah,
we
see,
all do that. We're all at fault because we're not God and we're not source, but we
yes,
better
some of
every
us more than
day.
others.
Right. But I,
Right.
I know that we both know because we've had contact, and this kind of contact is a beautiful kind of contact
Oh
between
my
us.
goodness.
And the
That's right.
contact that I had at age 5, and before that, even in the womb, that I knew with my galactic family and my soul family that are here right now with me, have groomed me, helped me, nurtured me, supported me my whole life. Because when we grow up with, what was I doing on a craft with these little gray beings when you're 5 years old, and why I
Yes,
feel like I'm not
that's
part of
really
this world.
fascinating.
And then, you and I have been off planet a lot. I was at Pluto last week. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And why would you? I've never made anything
No,
up. I mean, but it's
no,
hard
no,
to explain some of these different dimensions that we go to. So we are of the earth, and we are of I call it in connecting inner and outer space. I grew up with a rocket scientist dad and a grandfather and a grandfather who was an architect. So, and I am
right,
those things. And I grew up with connecting inner and outer space, from the stars to, my grandfather standardizing 2x4s as a lumberman and an architect who loved nature, didn't want to destroy all the plantings of all the lumber and the wood of the world and trees. So,
right,
my son's in forestry. We're all doing what we're here to be doing. And we've chosen this. We chose to come here to help on earth and off. And it's
right,
really hard being sensitive people, and all of us are, who have had these contact experiences. And
right,
that's why we are the disclosure. We are our family. We have other families. We have earth families and other families, whether it's, Archangel Metrion, who's right here with me, or Archangel Michael, or beings, or however you grew up, depending upon what your culture was and what your religion is. It's all the same thing. It's being connected to your own belief or your own heart system or whatever it is. And that's why we connected, because when you have a wild and wiggly life like you and I have, and a lot of people, we're so grateful for it. And we're still trying to unpack how completely wild it is and how beautiful it is. And we're so grateful for it, because it
right,
did change us, and we asked for the change, and
right.
we are the
Yeah,
change.
yeah.
Right.
I can't help but mention.
Yeah,
Uh,
mention how you
I,
asked for your change, right?
oh, right, but I can't help but mention how funny it is too, because it if you compare the amount of people, everyday folks, just like you and I, who have come out of the ET closet
Recently, I mean,
and
just
have
that,
only, you know, I mean, I know I've seen them in the past in the sky when I was a child, and I remember actually waving and speaking to them several times when I was little. But I don't go into my childhood too often because it's not important, relevant to me anymore. It's sort of what I'm doing right now that's relevant, and I'm finding that the best way for me to describe the experience is to listen to all of the other people, because I'm able to get some of the best aspects of my own experience described to me. I often find that the English language isn't serving me the way that I wish that it would when trying to describe the divine, or to try and describe the beautiful and the magical experiences that come to us just through cognition. It just, utterly fills me with gratitude, and I know it does the same for you. You're so ebullient and beautiful, and so excited to express these ideas. The thing that I'm really praying happens is that we have this 3 or 4 or 5 genetic trigger switch that helps open up the rest of mankind's cognitive faculties. There are a lot of, rumors about how much of our brain that we use. And it's a fallacy that we only use a small percent of it. We actually use all of our brain all of the time. If you didn't use all of your brain all of the time, you wouldn't be able to cognate reality. It's just the way that it is. That fallacy was born back in the early 19th century with Victorian surgery rooms, adding up, putting an electrode on some guy's temple and watching his arm move. And then if they put it on a different part of his head and nothing happened, they'd say that part of the brain is asleep. fascinating how those old, medical rumors survive all the way to this day. You can walk down the street and say, how much of your brain are you using? Well, they say you only use 30%. Well, I'm sorry, it's every part of your brain that you're using. And so it's fascinating when you start understanding the neurological information that we've developed about how human brains think. Because when I go back to thoughts or things, I'm starting to understand the fundamental amino acid and enzymatic exchange mechanisms which create powerful manifestation around me.
Right. And that is a big
it's
difference.
pretty interesting.
Right. I mean, Dad was at Einstein with Einstein at Princeton in 1943. And that's why our dinner conversations growing up were because he had talked about it in college and then worked with him on the Manhattan Project. We started talking about the brain when I was a little girl, and he was an electrical engineer, and he'd take apart my watch, and we talked about the stars and about aerodynamics because he was a rocket scientist. And and we know now the good thing about everything sort of crashing and dying, crashing and burning and reinventing itself now is we're rechanging history, politics, the financial system, everything's in a reboot and a refresh right now. We don't care about the past. Today, yes, it's good to learn from the past, but everything is regrouping at such a speed right now. And that's why it's so cool that, we're all studying the brain. We all want to learn. And I love that you're explaining it. We should have more shows on this about how we really do. But it's all about now. We know that we live in the past, present, and future all at the same time. And the only thing that matters is now. I mean, when I used to do meditation and yoga with Ram Dass for about 10 years, about 20 years ago at a friend's house down the street. And he'd just say, not only like be here now, and then we watched him start declining. Then he'd come to our monthly practices in a wheelchair. And he always just said, just be the best you can, settle the noise, be still, be good, follow the love. And, look what, we all learn every day more about what we can do and be right this second. And that's why we are here right now having this conversation, because our brains, and if we have blockages, all I want to do every day till I'm at the next stage is unblock more and more of any of those fears and judgments that I have from growing up. That's where we have to go back sometimes and look at some of the things so we can be as free as we are humanly capable of to move each day forward with more openness and seeing more possibilities and not be scared. And look at the brain and study like you and I love to do. And you getting your astrophysics degree recently is just mind blowing. So
in Buddhism, it's known as, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Yes. No,
I was just going to say in Buddhism, it's known as mindfulness.
Yes.
So we try and attain mindfulness. And when you're mindful of your behavior and your thoughts at all times, then you don't have to worry about your behavior moments ago or a day ago or a month ago, because you're living in that mindful place. There's no deviation. When you get to this place, you don't even have those thoughts that arise to making fun of somebody else. And this act of mindfulness really opens up the pathway as far as meeting other people that are actually just helping so many more people than I can help. And it's funny, we all do our little bit. I'm no hero. Let me tell you, I think that I can be a hero for myself, but like I've said before, I don't have mentors anymore. I have a few older friends that are professors whom I just love, but I don't really have any mentors, and they're all passed on. And so I have to set a higher mark for myself, my own higher guide that I have to attain to, so that I always have something higher to reach for. It's like Robert Browning said, a man's reach must exceed his grasp, else what's a heaven for?
Yeah, well, and that's why we have these conversations with all different.
So I'm really working on it.
People that like even this. We have so many different parts of ourselves that we all want to improve and shift and change. And that's why we have these conversations here and with a few other or many other people that we can learn from to keep opening up those passages, whatever it is. And some people don't have the gift of, or the experience to just say, oh, well, yes, I was abused as a child or whatever, because everybody's had something. Let go of that. So that's why a lot of people still do. And I get triggered every once in a while, like everybody does, to to go, oh my God, I wish I didn't have that feeling. So anyway, we keep
Right.
improving. The whole point is that we keep learning and improving and staying open and open and open as we age, so we don't get stuck in the fear and get put the blinders on because we don't want to have to
Yeah,
stop the shift.
I agree. One of the ways I combat that is by not even talking about some of the other aspects that are going on. You know, it's a shame when we start paying attention to the nonsense in the media, how they're trying to shift that bullshit paradigm.
That's why we're not even going to go there now, and we don't
Right.
even say that.
Yeah,
So we're not even
I'm
going
done.
there. No,
I'm
no,
done talking
no. I
about it.
mean, I won't talk about it. Well,
I
because
just,
we already know that.
it's
So
not
this
even
is time.
language I use anymore, but I do have a very deep and sincere appreciation for all of the heads of state, all of the heads of giant medical departments that have all stepped down from their positions because they've had an extraterrestrial meeting or an encounter.
Right.
And there's, I can't remember the lady's name. I believe she was the Minister of Health for the government of Norway or Denmark. She came
I remember
forward.
her. Yes.
Yeah, a real lovely gal, middle aged, very professional. She had a PhD or two, and she says I've been communicated to, and they've told us to stop polluting the planet, and yada yada yada, and said our behavior must change right now, immediately, and they fired her. And so, but before they gave her her notice, she quit. So she, you know,
You
she knew, and she was. Governments are run by idiots. I'm
Well,
sorry. It's just
anyway, we're not going to go there. I mean, that's
no,
why.
no, no. I'm cracking a joke. I'm
No,
just,
but
but it's like,
it's not. We're not even going to go there because it's negative. Anyway, that's
well,
why when I interviewed Preston Dennett last week, and he's done like 100
yeah,
books on what the healing powers
sure,
of
sure, sure.
I would like to, when we have about 10 or 15 minutes more, I'd love you to talk about how you asked for and got your friend and how that sort of happened too.
Oh,
That
well,
is a really good story. You've talked about a little
well,
bit here before, but
it's well, that's a great segue. I wasn't trying to be that way. So
I know.
basically, the last time we were and I were talking about my contact with Kim Jim
Mhm.
was right before I'd say about 3/4 of the way through the contact experience of sitting on my balcony looking out over the ocean. We started developing this process where I wasn't sure that I was being spoken to, and yet I was receiving a lot of fabulous ideas in these huge bundles, huge packages. And also, I've never been one to talk to myself. There's nothing wrong with talking to yourself. But then I was starting to hear people talking to me and then waiting for a response audibly, but there was obviously no sound. So I started asking them to give me 4 or 5 scientific clues that I could punch into our AI under Google. And boy, the stuff that came up was all cutting edge, brand new stuff that I'd never even heard of. And this is before I was reintroduced to higher mathematics. So I knew I was having conversations. The way that they communicate with us that I've been working on is something that I call CLPT, and it's continuous light pulse technology. And they're able, I'm sure in some way, utilizing Einstein and de Broglie's theorem that they discovered, of putting highly compressed volumes of mathematics into light pulses and then sending them to us. So when you think you're looking at a ship that's just blinking, you're actually receiving a very complex photaic light package that travels down your optic nerve and attenuates your parietal lobes. And so once your parietal lobes receive this light flash through your optic nerve, then they cognate that and they send the signal in this form of an amino acid and an enzymatic response. And it travels down a portion of your brain called the diencephalon. And that then takes those groups of electrical signals that are enzymatic based and distributes them to that part of your brain that will be able to cognate that energy flash. So what they are able to do is put whole quanta of information into different light flashes that our brains are already set up to understand without this being a known form of mathematics that's taught to us in university. And believe me, I've discussed this with heads of the math department at Cambridge and at Heidelberg. I've talked about this with mathematicians at Purdue and Caltech. All of my friends at SpaceX know me for this single and third dimensional reduced physics nomenclature using a quantum version of linearized physics. That's a very hardcore language, but it's only just been revealed to me over a 5-year period of my being removed from the planet. And it's a very complex mathematics language that exhibits a whole dimensionality all on its own. And I'm positive that this language will lead us to what's called a Mandelbrot. And a Mandelbrot is a fractal 3 to infinite dimensional form that acts as a ladder that serves our mathematic need to go from one higher value of higher mathematics to the next. And if it wasn't for the Mandelbrot, Richard Feynman did all the work on that and Mandelbrot. But it's a fascinating unfolding mathematic exercise that I've been receiving from them. And mentioning this other gal was because heads of state are coming forward. People are coming forward. Bus drivers are coming forward. Teachers are coming forward. She came forward.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
And
it's that big, beautiful global awakening. And so when Kim Jim told me there was going to be 3 or 4 or 5 triggers, genetic triggers to help us wake up, we're all at the same time. It's the 100 monkey theory. We're all at the same time going to go boom, and we're all going to be self-realized. And everything that's going on that's wrong will stop immediately.
We'll hope so, and that'll happen.
Oh no, it will. It will, because it's like
years, right? Next,
we become the parents. We become the parents. So yeah, everything's good.
So these okay, so the light pulses, because that's what our talk today is really about, is those magical light pulses that come and go through us, and how, this should be a book for children. I will do this with you. I think
well,
how do you describe the like 5 stages then of how?
Well, okay. Well, there's a few more than that, but light behaves in a predictable manner.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes in the form of frequencies and in waves and in different resonant forms called light packages. Light can be diffracted and reflected and increased and absorbed to a point. But the final destination and the velocity of light, which we have recorded, are about as much as we know about it. Light has perplexing properties which are now being reviewed by higher universities as far as being able to bend light using thermodynamics, different forms of the cold force and the hot force, using sound, using different forms of gravitational theorem to see if we can bend light, because we know that light changes its behavior around the event horizon of a black hole. So why can't we, without that, we don't need black hole technology, why don't we look at how we can bend light or utilize light as a form of communication so that we can teach mathematics to each other? You see, the human brain may be far older than 125 million years old. We are an evolutionary process creature, at least that's what we've been blended with. So our pre-brain is set up to understand and have an enzymatic response to everything. But because we're not being conscientious or cognitive about the functions of our own brains, we don't always consider those functions on a daily basis. But for you, if I was to flash, perhaps 25 different mathematics symbols that have all gone through this compression process to you in a period of half a second, you may not register it. You just see it as a flash of light. But within a day or 2 days or 3 days, if you have a healthy nervous system, then your brain will cognate that idea and you'll think the idea is your own. So when they started teaching me this new linearized quantum physics process to transmit mathematics at a higher order, they explained it to me this way. If you take 500 different symbols from the nomenclature of physics and you turn it this way and you linearize that, it becomes a dot. But using something like Euler's formula, you can break that dot down into subcomponents of 16, 12, 8, 4, and then you can start to shine a light through it. And that light shows you all the symbols. So when you turn it this way, then you can decollapse that to read the formula out the original way. On Earth, when we want to teach calculus and teach Pythagorean theorem, it's just known. You get on a chalkboard with a piece of chalk and you start teaching geometry, higher geometry, calculus and trigonometry. We just go through that rote process. It takes most people who are smart 17 years to come close to getting their master's in physics. And it's amazing because then it's another probably 4 to 7 years to get a PhD in quantum physics, depending on what university and if the work you're approved of is being supported by a university. It's so very, very important to make sure that when we release a new mathematics language, that we get all of our T's crossed and our I's dotted. So this absorbs almost all of my intellectual freedom. I'm not born a mathematician. You know, my mom raised lions. I was with lion cubs when I was a kid. I was out in the desert collecting rocks and crystals. But I'm a mathematician now, and it's funny, you know, the synonym between pie and pie is crazy. There's all these little things that happen. So I'm learning more, and the more I see ships that flash a bright light at me, the more I realize I'm receiving even yet further instructions to explain higher mathematic programs. It's so fascinating. So everything that I've seen in the form of flashes over a period of 5 years from certain ships only has cumulatively turned into a complete thesis or a theorem.
I mean, from Kim Jim specifically, your
From
guy.
the beginning of seeing his ship. And now every ship since has always been some sort of ambassadorial craft that checks in on me or that comes to give me a download when I'm looking. You know, it's the same thing. Most of the people I know that see ships will be sitting at their desk or doing something rote, and then all of a sudden inspired to go outside and look at the sky.
I did when I saw some UFOs doing a little dance out there. I thought,
Right?
I want to go
Here,
see
here.
some UFOs dance couple of years ago out on my putting green at 4 a.m. And
Right.
2 seconds later, I looked up and I, oh, thank you. Ask and she shall receive. It was pretty, I mean, that was really fun. I
Yeah,
haven't
lots of things.
But what's interesting is, and then how long does it, so it takes different times to get that download, because I get different kinds of downloads. Of course, that's why ETs and people use telepathy and light language and.
Okay, so I'm hardwired. I'm hardwired. They changed me.
Yeah.
I was changed.
Yep, I know. Yeah.
They realigned my neural network. I wasn't set up to be a maths person. I had terrible maths when I was in school, all the way up to junior college. I just got my bachelor's of science in thermodynamics by waxing my professor's Lamborghini. Honestly, it was just awful. But I got my degree, and then I went forward in mathematics because they helped me.
Yep.
Now, part of the process of sending a signal comes in a stream of light. So the beginning of that stream, right before it hits your eye, behind it are thousands to hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of coordinated mathematic flashes in that stream. The beginning of the stream carries what I call an enzymatic trigger, which makes your brain awaken to receive the signals that they send. So I've received an enzymatic trigger at the beginning of the process of following ships with my eyes in the sky, long before they came to collect me. So they were pre-processing my brain and formatting my brain to understand the light language.
Mhm.
So they set me up cerebrally, and all of the enzymatic responses which occurred from seeing those flashes of light from deep outer space set the mathematic process up so that whenever I get a flash from a ship, I cognate it almost instantly. I know it's either instructions to act on, something that's going to be revealed enzymatically in the next 24 hours. I don't have to wait weeks or months anymore. When I get a flash, it's like, hi, David, this is the instruction packet for this maths program. Because they know I love mathematics. Whatever the final story is that I'm going to come up with about the best way to describe how they changed me, I'm going to describe to you every piece of this language and show you exactly how it works with video, films, mathematics, all sorts of amazing three-dimensional computer graphics. I've got mathematicians that are interested in helping me with this thing. It's really going to knock people's socks off. And here's the answer to everything I was trying to explain. When you've got that piece of chalk and you're standing at a chalkboard, a good physics professor can knock out Gauss, Ampere's, and Maxwell's theory on a chalkboard in 3 hours.
Right.
But it takes 15 years of doing that to be able to do that.
Well, and the thing is too, when we get the help, like when Dad was, he was with ETs forever. He was designing rockets and reentry systems for the government, NASA, and the Navy and stuff, as I've said, for his whole life. And they were also doing all the optics for Apollo and a lot of that. So he tried to explain to me this system that you're almost describing to me when I was 10 years old, 15 years old, 20 years old, my whole life. And then when I took physics for architecture school, like 30 years ago, I went, oh, but when I was on the craft at age 10, and I was gone for a couple of weeks in human time, I remember them putting stats in my head, and I know they were putting math stats because I'm art and design, and had only did a couple of years of architecture school, and then thank God I got hired by NASA because I couldn't do all the weight loads. I couldn't do that kind of math. It was too hard for my dyslexic and weird brain. But anyway, I know, and they put in stats. I said, what were the stats? Math, science, like what my father had, because they've been watching me and 94 generations of my DNA of my space family and stuff. So I know they've been helping me too, to be able to take me off planet up until last week. And I don't remember a lot of this yet, but I will. All these trips that I've been doing on these subhabitat, I go in physical plane, I go in body, and I'm helping all these different ETs and species create these interiors. And some of them call me the scientist. Mostly they call me the designer, the artist. So I go and bring in art and design, and I've been doing that 125 times just in the last few years. But it's because they have been guiding me and shifting me and helping my brain and parts of me that were blocked or not developed at all. So I get the little tiniest bit of what you're talking about, because I know they've helped me, or I wouldn't be able to. They take me, they invited me, they take me, I just go, and I know when I've gone. But they do shift us. They totally shift us. And oh my gosh, we have a couple more minutes here.
Oh,
So
great. So just to finish that thought, the
yes.
idea was when you spend all that time at a chalkboard, by changing the way we teach physics to each other and adopting their program, I can probably accelerate your physics understanding and remove 10 years of study time out of the way so that you get your degree in astrophysics by the time you're out of high school.
Well, you're so needed here. How long will that, on the parting notes here?
I'm working on it. With all the other stuff, oh my God, I'm working on creating the most amazing three-dimensional representations of higher equations. It's mind-blowing stuff. And I just eventually am going to have to go out and get a GoFundMe, because it's going to cost me about 40 grand to get the video work done with the computer modeling and everything, but it'll be totally worth it because this is going to blow your mind.
Well, you were picked, you asked for it, you got it.
Oh God, I'm having a great time.
I know it. I can't believe every time I talk to you, and we text back and forth, of course, but every time I talk to you, it's getting bigger and better and clearer. And that's what this life is all about. So anyway, you are such an inspiration to me, Dave Wallace.
I love you so much. You're so tolerant.
So are you.
Oh, come on. It's so funny. A lot of people say, oh yeah, well, you have a successful pie shop. And I said, only because I built it from my hands, right? I still believe in God. God speaks to my heart. I can't understand the mind and the thoughts of God, but I do God's work with my hands when I can. And if I could just finish what my presence here is today, is let's finish this with a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson.
Great.
Finish each day and be done with it. You have done what you could. Some blunders and absurdities no doubt crept in. Forget them as soon as you can. Tomorrow is a new day. You shall begin it well and serenely.
And on that note, hear, hear. God bless you. And let's be kinder to each other and spread that word. Till
Oh, get
next
the love
time.
out there, babe.
Wow. Well, we are doing it right here, right now until we meet again.